Okay, and our final question today I'm taking for myself. This question comes from Tim, and Tim says, "Hey Jack, I travel often, quite often by air travel, and I like to take fishing gear along with me. But checking an extra piece of baggage proves sometimes to be more expensive than just buying a cheap rod when I get there. I know you love to vacation in South Florida and that you go fishing every time you go. I probably fish more than I should when I'm there with my wife. I should probably spend more time walking the beach, but he's right. I do fish a lot. So I bet you've come up with a good solution for traveling as a fisherman. I've looked into several options, but the better gear seems very expensive. I'm not trying to be cheap. I'd be willing to spend up to, say, $150 for a rod and reel combo if I could find a good travel rod that's actually a good quality rod and a good reel to go with it that would balance well. Most of the places I go, I would be fishing for fish that are a couple pounds to maybe up to at most 6 to 8 pounds. If I were lucky, 10. What type of equipment do you use, and is it realistic to find something good quality that is travel capable at about $150 or less? The answer is absolutely yes, it is. And he's right. Like, you can get like a good medium action, not good long term, but good enough medium action fishing rod sometimes at places like Academy Sports and Outdoors for like, they have these red ones that are like $9 to $10. Seriously. And they're not terrible rods. And at one time, what I actually used to do is I would just go to Florida. I'd bring my reels and all my tackle, and we would just swing by a cheap sporting goods store, and I would buy like two medium light action rods for like $20. And then I would fish with them, and I would find kids or something on the beach that were there, and I would say, "You're gonna have to get your own reel, but if your mom says or your dad says you can have this fishing rod. I'm leaving tomorrow." And I would give them away. And if I couldn't find anybody to give them to, I'd just leave them on the porch. And you might think, well, that's crazy. That's $20. Yeah, but it was like $40 to ship the big rod case as a baggage item when they started dinging you for all of these things. So I didn't want to spend that money either, and I went out and I searched for what would work best for me. And I came up with a rod from Browning called the Safari Series. And I'm videotaping this segment for YouTube. So if you go look at the YouTube segment of this later on today, or if you're on YouTube right now, I actually have some props for this. I actually have those, the things that I'm going to use here with me. First, where has it gone? This is the tube. So this comes, the Browning Safari rod that I have is a 4-piece rod. It comes in a brown tube that's 2 feet long, and it breaks down into 4 pieces. The one I have is a medium light fast action, which means it's one of the lighter rods, and it would be very good for what you're asking about. There are rods that are 3-piece rods that are like a medium action instead of a fast action. People that are after larger fish, those medium actions would probably be better. So I do like that it comes, though, in a 2-foot tube. It's a very rugged tube. And in the standard roller bag, I have no trouble just taking this and putting this in to my suitcase, and then, that fits just fine. The rod itself is a very well-made rod with Fuji guides. It's cork handled. It is a spinning rod like was asked about, and I actually prefer, for kind of universal gear where I never know where I'm going to go, I prefer a spinning rod to a casting rod, meaning you have the open face spinning reel versus your closed face or bait casting rod where the reel sits on top while you're fishing, the reel hangs to the bottom. Again, the rod breaks down into 4 pieces, and they're all a little under 2 feet, so they fit into the tube just fine, and it works out really, really well. It comes with a little vinyl bag that each section of the rod has its own tube. That folds in, it rolls up, so it slips into that tube, and it stays very, very well protected. And that's a big part of the selling point as to why I bought it. Now, the only place I know to get this rod is from Bass Pro Shops. And reading the reviews on Bass Pro Shops, there is one person there that said they went to Belize and they were fishing for peacock bass and snook and had one of these rods break on them. And Bass Pro makes an extreme travel rod series that costs the same price, but they do not make it in a 4-piece fast action. They make it in a 3-piece action. The tubes for all the Bass Pro ones are 34 inches. Browning also makes 3-piece versions that are medium action instead of fast action. So they're a little bit stiffer. Those are again in three pieces. I would imagine the Brownings in the three pieces are pretty much probably equivalent to the Bass Pro brand, but they cost the same. So I'll have a link in the notes to both of those rods. But even I think there was a 4-piece version of the Bass Pro rod. They just decided to go uniform on a single tube, so that the only downside with the medium actions from Browning or all the Bass Pro rods is that they're 34 versus 24 inches, so 10-inch longer tube. So you want to make sure that whatever your suitcase or whatever you're packing that would go into, that it's going to fit. Let me say these are all great for like behind the truck seat too, because you're not going to have a rod getting all tangled up and jacked up. So wherever you are, all of a sudden you get an opportunity to fish. You can pull it out, keep a small assortment of tackle with you in small lock boxes or tackle boxes, and you're ready to go anywhere and every place you show up. So that's what I would recommend from a rod standpoint. From a reel standpoint, if you're going to go with what I went with, which again is a 6-foot 6-inch 4-piece. And I think this is like the best overall, unless you're getting into really big fish. And I'll talk about some of the fish I've landed with it. But it's a 6'6", 4-piece, fast action, medium light Browning Safari. That's the rod that I have. That I have actually 2 of them, and I like them enough that I have 2 of them. The reel that I found that I like to pair with it the best is a Mitchell 300. These have been made forever, and I'm not going to say they are as great as they were back when they used to make them in France in the 1950s and 60s. But that's how long they've been around. They're actually older than that. I think they've been made since the 30s in France. And I actually have many of the old-style Mitchell 300s. You can find them on eBay, and they're usually kind of bad repair. But as long as they're functioning, they're pretty easy to take apart, clean up, wash out, re-grease, re-lube, and put back together and make them as good as new. And I check eBay every once in a while, and I'll pick up 2 or 3 of them and refurbish them. And I have a pretty big box of them that I'm just keeping set aside because I know one day they're not going to be so easy to find anymore. That said, the modern Mitchell, so anyway, the rod sells for about $80, and the Mitchell 300 sells for about $40. I'll have a link to where you can get the Mitchell on Amazon, but again, you have to get the Browning rod or the Bass Pro rods at Bass Pro Shops. The only place I've ever found them. The modern Mitchell 300s are great reels. I've used them a lot. They balance perfectly with the particular rod that I just mentioned, that 6'6", fast action. Again, fast action means it's light, very, very sensitive. Now, what kind of fish can you catch on that rod without it shattering and breaking or whatever? Last time I was in Florida, I was catching black-tip shark pups that were about 28 inches. They were like clones. Every single one was the same on that rod with a small steel leader, so because they've got teeth, man, they'll cut that line. But you're looking at a fish that's about 8.5, 9 pounds, and blacktip sharks are very hard fighting, strong fish. Catching them in the surf, and I was able to land every single one of them with no damage to the rod whatsoever. I've also caught snook up to about 30 inches. I don't know exactly how much they weighed because when I catch snook in the surf, I immediately release them. They're kind of a special fish to me. I don't want any harm to come from them. But I can tell you, they're a tough fish. And it takes finesse to land a snook that's 30 inches long on a light action rod, running like 10 to 12 pound monofilament line, not special braided line or anything like that. So whatever you're fishing with, if you're fishing with something that's going to break that rod, I think you're kind of exceeding the class of the rod. And I haven't used the heavier taper, heavier action Brownings, but I would imagine looking at them, I think Browning is OEMing the ones for Bass Pro anyway. But you're free to take your pick from them. They both look like really good rods. They have really great sensitivity. As another option for your reel, the other reel that I found that you're not going to go spend a fortune on is the Cardinal by Abu Garcia. This is the Cardinal SX40. And both of those reels are perfect for what I like to do. I like to fish. I think this is going to fit right in with the person asking the question, kind of that quality class of fish. I like to fish for fish that are as big as I can get on rods that are kind of as lightweight and gives as much fight as possible and as much sport as possible. And both of these reels balance really well in that kind of 6 foot to 7 foot light action to medium light action rod. They cast beautifully. They hold up well. They don't cost the dear Lord's fortune. if you saltwater fish like I do with them and you end up screwing up and getting them kind of in the water, and you can ruin a reel. I mean, immediately when you're done fishing in saltwater, you want to completely rinse these out with fresh water. And when you're done with your trip, you want to oil them and give them a good hot water bath and give them a good oiling and greasing and service them. But if you do forget, you get tired, you get one all jacked up and the salt water just destroys it, you're out $40, not, $200-300. And they've done everything I've ever asked for them, both of these reels. I'm really, really fond of them. And again, you might want to consider checking out eBay, and you want to look for all parts included and functioning when you buy one of these, because some of them are really bad. The old school Mitchell 300s. My father was the one that turned me on to these reels, and my grandfather. And you could tell they kind of had a reverence for them. And I found out eventually, talking to them as they got older, well, that's because back when when your dad was a kid, my grandfather talking now, when you wanted a Mitchell, you saved up for it. Like, this was not equivalent to $40 today. These were like $40 in 1950. And today you can get them for under $20. Again, they need some work, but I have a bunch of them and they still work. And they are a great little antique that there's still an opportunity on. But that's my recommendations for you with that, and I hope that you can use those recommendations well. For those of you that are not looking for a travel rod, I still recommend the Mitchell 300 and the Garcia Cardinal SX40 as great reels for that class of rod.